Hello, welcome to the Revealing. I am your host, Kohberger, here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. As a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions. I'm not here to slander anyone. I do intend to speculate. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, tonight, I want to do something interesting for you. A while back, I broke down my thoughts on that original PCA and the order in which events happened in that PCA. Well, in light of these new facts, for example, the defense's response to prosecution's motion to limit the witnesses, well, we've learned that the prosecution is now stating that the original PCA is irrelevant. However, Ms. Taylor is objecting, citing cases, because she wants to disprove the original information that led to the search warrants against Mr. Kohberger, which in all reality seems fair. So we really need to break down what was the information that originally set in motion a judge to issue search warrants for Mr. Kohberger's what? What was the search warrants that they issued on Mr. Kohberger before his arrest? The main search warrants were for the cached report of his phone. 24 hours prior to the atrocity, and I believe it was 24 hours after the atrocity was the initial search warrant that was granted. And then, of course, there was the historical cast data that was also granted to them. So what information did they go to the judge with to prove probable cause to get those initial search warrants? Because that's what Ann Taylor wants to discredit, so that everything after that is irrelevant, fruit of the poisonous tree. How can we obtain that? How can we ascertain that? Well, again, we've got to go back to the original PCA. But this time when we do it, we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to go to that PCA and we're going to reorganize it, and we're going to put it in chronological order as events occurred in the investigation, as they actually occurred in the investigation. Now, I've had the opportunity to sit down and go through that PCA, do a little editing to it. So again, this is speculation time, because I have re-edited the PCA, all of the key points and the key timelines of events that would have led to the point where they got the search warrants for Mr. Kohberger's cast data. And I'm going to share that with you this evening. We're going to go through it together, and I'm going to have it on the screen for everybody to be able to go through and look at for themselves and pick it apart. Is Pavarotti right? Is he wrong? Is he close? Is he off? I want you to decide on that one tonight. And in this one, I'm not going to add in any of the information on the timeline that I've put together. You know which timeline I'm talking about. However, it's very important for you to follow along with me on this one and really get this information I'm going to be talking about tonight for you to truly understand what I'm going to be talking about to you Sunday. Because I got a big one coming to you Sunday, folks. I've got so much information, I could sit here and make these videos. I could probably make 100 of them right now and still not recover information I've already covered, or not do it in a way that doesn't expose you to something new every time. But I guess we have a long time before this trial starts, maybe. But tonight we need to focus in. We need to understand this true timeline of events that happened in the investigation, so that as we explore further, it all makes sense to you. So, if you have the ability to, you should pull up, this is if you have the ability to, you should either pull up or print out that original PCA that was used to arrest Mr. Kohberger. That way you can follow along with me and see how it's going to be quite a bit different than what I've put together today. And when I say I've put it together, I'm not saying that I've gone in and I've changed it. Okay, I haven't changed it. But I have reorganized it in a way to where we're getting a lot closer to the truth on this one. So I'm going to have it on the screen. If you don't have one to follow along with, that's okay. Just follow along with me on the screen. And if you want to go back and study what I've put together, I'm going to have it in a way where you can do that. And I hope you enjoy this Friday night deep dive with Pavarotti. Let's go.
Sorry. Now, Pavarotti was a good friend. He didn't have that.
Okay, so this is going to be the actual PCA that should have been written by Blaker in the beginning. Now, what I've done is I've gone through here, and you're going to see I've highlighted some areas, and I've added a few notes in here. You'll see my notes are all going to be the ones in red. And I haven't written the entire PCA out, but I have written out all the things that are pertinent. And I've done it in a way where I hope you'll be able to go through. If you want to go back through this at some other point, you'll be able to do it. But I'm going to go through, I'm going to read this, and some of the highlighted areas I am going to point out. But this is how the PCA should have been written based on the timeline that I've put together on this event. Now, as I go through this, I'm going to leave out everything that I have said about the informant and my speculation on the crime. So I'm going to let you decide for yourself. This is strictly on facts of the PCA, organized in the way that things actually happened, that it should have been written. And I have added two things that I'll point out as we get through it. But let's go through this real quick. It's quite a bit of information. I know I don't want to bore you to death, but I think this is important for you to have. So it's going to start with, I've reviewed numerous videos that were collected and have had conversations with the other MPD officers and Idaho State Police detectives and FBI agents that are similarly surveilling footage that was obtained. A review of the camera footage indicated that a white sedan, hereafter suspect vehicle number 1, was observed traveling westbound in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive at Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 in Moscow at approximately 3:28 a.m. On this video, it appeared suspect vehicle number 1 was not displaying a front license plate. A review of the footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1 starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. These sightings show suspect vehicle 1 makes an initial 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leave via Walenta Drive. Okay, so you'll see that I've highlighted a lot in this. The first part that I've highlighted, I've done this for not for this video, but coming up on Sunday, I'm going to try to get it out to you. I believe I've figured out exactly what has taken place in this scenario. And again, it's not what you've been told. But when we look at this first paragraph, you'll see it talks about the vehicle that they've identified as suspect vehicle number 1. And the way that they've identified it is, you'll see in green there, it says, on this video, it appeared suspect vehicle number 1 was not displaying a front license plate. So the video, the camera footage they have of the vehicle where they've identified it without the front license plate is between 3:26 a.m. and 3:28 a.m. That is the vehicle. That's going to be the vehicle that's going to make the initial first 3 passes by the residents and then leave via Walenta Drive. Now, as we go through this, that one, as I'm going to explain in my next video, I believe that one is Mr. Kohberger's white Elantra. We'll leave that out for this one. Now, suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road, number 52, and then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. Suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect vehicle 1 is next observed traveling southbound on Walenta Drive. I believe, and again, I'll get in this in the next video, through the work of Get a Clue, I believe that was a combination. The second time that this vehicle comes up, it doesn't say in this video where you see again it doesn't have a front license plate. I believe it's been misidentified on the vehicle that comes back at 4:04 and leaves at 4:20 of two different vehicles, one being a Chrysler 300, the other one probably a Ford Fusion. That's speculation. Okay, so law enforcement officers provided video footage of suspect vehicle 1 to forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilize surveillance footage to identify the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner has approximately 35 years of law enforcement experience with 12 years at the FBI. His specified training includes identifying unique characteristics of vehicles, and he uses a database that gives visual clues of vehicles across states to identify differences between vehicles. After reviewing the numerous observations of suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed that suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Now we're just going to continue through this investigation timeline. On November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo queried white Elantras registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate LFZ869. This vehicle was registered to BRYAN Kohberger, hereafter Kohberger, residing at the 1530 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201 in Pullman, Washington. Now, you'll see in my note here that he did not put his eyes on the car, and he likely would not have known that the car did not have a front license plate due to not having knowledge of Pennsylvania license plate requirements. He did a query. He seen he had a car, matched the description. It wasn't the correct year model, but it did match the description, and it was registered in Pennsylvania. He did not go out and physically put his eyes on the car, though. That happened next. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way. It says last camera that picked up the white Elantra. That same day at approximately 12:58 a.m., WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra at 1530 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman in the parking lot. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU students. Officer Whitman also ran the car, and it returned to Kohberger with a Washington tag. Now let's see the discrepancies once again in the PCA. It's saying, y'all follow me here. This is all copied and pasted from the actual PCA. Now you're going to see there's some misspelled words in here. I tried to clean as much of that up as I could, but I actually copied and pasted off of a PDF, and it doesn't identify the letters very well. So I still got more to clean up on this. But on November 25th, he queried it. It had a Pennsylvania license plate. The car was still registered to Pennsylvania, but he didn't go put his eyes on it. Okay, this is not necessarily a... wait a minute, I messed up. This is not necessarily a glitch in the PCA here. But you'll see that
Whitman also ran the car and returned to Kohberger with a Washington tag. The car was logged, then set aside. This is my notes here. The car was logged, then set aside, and the search for the car continued due to the fact this car had a front license plate. So the other guy didn't put his eyes on it. He doesn't know Pennsylvania doesn't have front license plates. This guy finds it, puts his eyes on it, and then he notices it has the front license plate. Well, they've already identified suspect vehicle 1 doesn't have a front license plate. So the investigation stalled at this point. They put that thing to the side, and it was just one of the many Elantras that they had found at that point and logged. No search warrants of any relevance were issued or returned between November 29th, 2022 and December 19th, 2022, except for 2. One was an Amazon on December 5th, and the other one was a Reddit on December 19th. And I can assure you, without Kohberger's name, neither of these warrants were going to be linked to him. Now, you'll see this is in purple. This is what I want everybody to start figuring out for themselves. Because on December 19th, one of 2 things happened, and you can decide which one happened. But number 1, your first choice. Results from an incredibly fast and accurate IgG, and that is investigative genetic genealogy, return given the name of Bryan Kohberger to law enforcement. Either that happened or a confidential informant gave law enforcement Bryan Kohberger's name. One of the 2, not both. I contend, and I have tried to put out as much evidence as I can for you. Some people still can't get it, but I contend it's number 2. But this is your choice in this. Now, from December 19th to the 22nd, this is when all the other things started to take place in the investigation. Now, if you go back and you read the PCA as you go along my new PCA with you, you're going to see it's going to be completely different. The words haven't been changed, but the order of everything is absolutely different. Because at this point, once they get Kohberger's name, now the other dominoes start to fall into place. Law enforcement reviews Kohberger's Washington State driver's license. So they get his name on the 19th, either from the informant or from the IgG. The investigation on Kohberger starts. So they get his Washington State driver's license information and photograph first. The license indicates Kohberger's a white male with a height of 6 foot, weight 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Wow. Everybody does in license photographs, I imagine. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male Dylan Mortensen saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. DM. Law enforcement then checked the Elantras in their database collected in the investigation. So now at this point, they're going back to the guys at WSU and checking the notes on what they had logged. They located an entry by a WSU officer of the car on November 29, 2022. After conducting a search of Kohberger's Washington plate, CFB 8708 on November 18, 2022, according to Washington State licensing, Kohberger registered the 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received a Washington plate, CFB 8708. Prior to this time, the 2015 white Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. So again, they're going through, okay, we got his license. He's got bushy eyebrows. Okay, he does own an Elantra. Let's check it. Was it in our list of them? Yes, it is. Okay, it's this one right here. Why didn't we catch it then? Oh, well, it had a front license plate when we found it the first time. The reason we didn't catch it is because he had just transferred his plate from Pennsylvania to Washington. Now, this was learned through communications with a Pennsylvania officer who's currently certified in the state of Pennsylvania. So they still had to call Pennsylvania and say, hey, do y'all have front license plates? Oh, you don't? Okay. Well, all right. Well, this is matching up. So far, we got bushy eyebrows, and he drives a vehicle that's not the right year model, but it's still a vehicle that matches everything. And at the time of the incident, it wouldn't have had a front license plate. So we're starting to line things up against Mr. Kohberger at this point. Let's see when that line of things stops, though. Law enforcement then searched Kohberger's previous contacts with law enforcement. This is what I'm talking about with a contact queue. Anytime that you have an interaction with law enforcement, you're pulled over for speeding, they check your name to run your ID to see if you have a warrant, that goes into a contact queue. That stays in that contact queue. So when they start to investigate you at any point, they can look and see every interaction that you've had with law enforcement, whether you've committed a crime or not. So further investigation, including a review of Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke's body cam and reports, showed that on August 21st, 2022, Brian Kohberger was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho by Corporal Duke. At this time, Kohberger, who was the sole occupant, was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate LFZ 8649, which was set to expire on November 30th, 2022. During the stop, which was recorded via law enforcement body camera, Kohberger provided his phone number as blank blank 8458, hereafter the 8458 phone, as his cellular telephone number. Investigators conducted electronic database queries and learned that the 8458 phone is a number issued by AT&T. So, now at this point, we've got Mr. Kohberger's phone number. Now we can do additional investigation into his phone number. So let's see what we've got. Do we have enough information to get the search warrant for his phone? Because that's what Ann Taylor is now trying to get thrown out, as you see with that last response to the state's motion. So what did we have? Well, we have Kohberger. We have his phone number. We have his ID that matches the eyebrows. And we've got what? Anything else at this point? Ooh. I don't think we've got much else at this point. They've had some search warrants come back that certainly didn't list anything about Mr. Kohberger. They've got his driver's license. I don't even know how they got to his driver's license if you don't take those 2 points that I made into consideration. And Miss Taylor knows that at this point. So it doesn't look to me like they have enough grounds just with a picture of his driver's license and verifying the fact that he drives a Elantra that matches the description and it didn't have a front license plate. Probably not enough for a judge to grant this search warrant that they applied for the phone records for Mr. Kohberger. So it's either the IGG was used to get that search warrant, and they would have had to put that in their search warrant application, because the judge is not going to grant a search warrant based on he drives a similar vehicle and he has bushy eyebrows. No, the judge is going to grant a search warrant based on those 2 factors and either the returned evidence of the IGG or a confidential informant pointing out Mr. Kohberger. If we could see, I guarantee you that search warrant is redacted or sealed, because if we could see what the officer truly put in that search warrant application to get that phone tap, then we would absolutely be able to know which of those 2 things happened. Now, on December 23rd, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12th, 2022 at 12 a.m. and November 14th at 12 a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the phone provider. Okay, so he got a search warrant for the historical phone records so he could figure out where Mr. Kohberger was during the time of the atrocity. Approximately 24 hours preceding the following times of the homicide. On December 23rd, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. These records indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to Brian Kohberger at an address in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since November 13th, 2022. Oh, the account has been open since, I must have left that part out, I'm sorry. November 13th, 2022 at approximately 2:42 a.m., the 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to the 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201. Pullman, Washington, hereafter the Kohberger residence. At approximately 2:47, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage southeast of the Kohberger residence. Consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the Kohberger residence and traveling south through Pullman, Washington. This is consistent with the movement of the white Elantra. Really. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cellular coverage, or the connection to the network is disabled, such as putting the phone in airplane mode or the phone's turned off. The 8458 phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m. So what they're saying is between 2:47 and 4:48, we have no idea where this phone is. As part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022, between 3 and 5 a.m. So again, this is not part of what it just talked about. This is separate. As part of the investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity. So what it's saying is, the FBI had unmasked all the cell phones in that area during the time of the atrocity long before December 23rd. They're cross-referencing now his 8458 phone number with the other phone numbers that were active during that time. And guess what? After determining that Kohberger was associated to both the white Elantras and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrant returns. A query of the 8458 phone in these returns did not show the 8458 utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 and 5. So what did they just say right there? We have no idea where he was between 3 and 5, basically, but we went ahead and checked that unmasking the FBI did of all the cell phones in the area, and between 3 and 5, we're verifying that his phone wasn't one of them. Okay, so we don't know where he's at, and we verified through the unmasking of the FBI earlier, and it says he wasn't there. He wasn't one of them. What should have happened at this point? This should have prompted law enforcement to bring in BRYAN Kohberger for an initial interview to get a statement of his whereabouts during these times. If he has an alibi, it can be verified at this time, and he could either be ruled out as a suspect or further investigated. That's what should have happened at this time. They go through, they find his, according to the PCA, they find his eyebrows. He's got a car that matches. That's it. They get a search warrant somehow for his call records, and what did that search warrant turn out to show? Nothing. Won't tell them anything about where he was during the time this happened, and the unmasking of the FBI won't tell them anything about where he was during the time this happened other than his phone wasn't there, so it ruled him out. That's what should have happened. Now instead, this is the ridiculousness that was put together to entice the FBI to collect DNA from BRYAN Kohberger's family's home to obtain DNA to secure the arrest warrant. This is unbelievable. Instead of actually having evidence, this is how they tried to talk their way around evidence. Based on my training and experience in conversations with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records as part of the investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. And if y'all want to continue reading through that nonsense, you're more than welcome to. But it is a big explanation of why we have no evidence against Mr. Kohberger at this point. Nothing corroborated it. Since we cannot verify anything, I made this statement of bullshit to try to explain away the lack of evidence as my note there. Again, they're going to continue with the BS. They're going to go into his background of his WSU website. He's a PhD student. He studied psychology, cloud-based forensics. He has basically what they're saying in all of this is he has knowledge of investigative techniques by law enforcement. And then they bring up his little Reddit psychological survey that he put out in Pennsylvania to try to show that he knew how crimes would take place and how investigations of those crimes would take place. This is their idea of getting a search or getting an arrest warrant at this point. They've already got the search warrant. And here's my note. Since we cannot verify anything, his educational background must explain why there's no evidence of his whereabouts during the time of the homicides. Additional ridiculousness was used to obtain historical caste records where they falsely determined visits to Moscow over the previous months to be stalking. And that's already been proven in court when the judge and the prosecutor says there's no evidence of stalking. So that search warrant should be eliminated as well based on everything else we're saying. Investigators believe that Kohberger is still driving the 2015 white Elantra because his vehicle was captured on December 13, 2022. And again, this is the proper timeline of this PCA. By a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. Information provided by a query to the database. Again, now they're going through that contact queue. That's the query to the database, showing all contacts with law enforcement, and they're breaking down what happened during those contacts. It talks about the surveillance video in Pennsylvania and the traffic stops in Colorado, the traffic stops in Idaho and all that. So here's the final synopsis of this thing. At this time, law enforcement compiles an irrelevant timeline of possible routes Kohberger's vehicle took during the hours before, during, and after the time of the homicides using collected video footage of either his vehicle or a vehicle similar to his, or more than likely a combination of both. Correlated information from the caste report, excluding the key hours of 3 to 5 a.m., this, along with the collected DNA from the family home, was used to secure the arrest warrant. Without the event that occurred on December 19th, the subsequent search warrants for the caste data of Kohberger's phone would not have happened, and each subsequent event would not have occurred. So this is what Ann Taylor is referring to when she's showing the warrants to get, or she's showing the responses and citing cases, because she wants to get the original warrant that was issued for the caste data thrown out for lack of evidence. She wants the original warrant that was the historical caste data thrown out for lack of evidence, because without those two things, which by the way, those two things produced absolutely nothing, because between the hours of 3 and 5, they can't show where he's at. They can't corroborate anything. In fact, they exclude him from the entire thing. So they were pretty much worthless anyways. But in the end, you've got to understand, it was either the IGG or it was a confidential informant. I contend, especially basis on the cases that she's citing in that last response to state's motion, think about it. She's wanting to get the warrants thrown out for the cast on his phone. How is she doing that? She's citing cases where confidential informants gave law enforcement information that led to people getting their wiretap warrant that ended up arresting them. It's the exact same thing that's happened in this situation. But that is the correct order of events of the PCA. I wanted to put that out there, and I wanted to put it out there in a way that you could go through and you could read it, compare it to the other PCA, and decide for yourself.
Okay, so after all that, now it's time for you to start making your own decision. Because we're going to get into it Sunday, but your own decision should start being made at this point. Do you believe it was the IGG that got to Mr. Kohberger? Or do you believe it was the informant? Now, I'm not here to push you either way today. Come Sunday, I'm going to be pushing you because I'm going to give you the evidence to back up what I believe is happening. And of course, it's not the IGG. The IGG is put out there to cover the truth. And by the way, y'all looked at that iPortal? Have you seen prosecution's motion to limit defense witnesses? Still isn't there, is it? It's been a week. Isn't that strange? It's been a whole week. It still hasn't posted. I'm telling you, folks, you can think about it any in 1,000 ways, but there isn't but one explanation. That was posted Monday by mistake. That is why the court sessions were canceled this week and damage control was put into motion, because why would they take something a judge has already ruled on, having sealed hearings, cancel them, obviously behind closed doors, freak out, reschedule them, and reschedule them as open hearings? I mean, something had to happen to put all that in motion, to change all that. It wasn't just the witnesses couldn't make it that day. Okay, well, they can't make it this day. All right, well, then I'm just going to go ahead and reschedule these things, and I'm going to make them all wide open. I'm not going to close anything. We'll bring the IGG out and we'll show everybody, because these witnesses won't show up when they're supposed to. Then I'll teach y'all. No, that isn't what happened. The judge didn't make a decision like that to overrule his previous decision. Something else happened. They went, oh, you did what? You posted that? Now everybody at home has got it and they're tearing it apart. They're not supposed to see that information. What do? Prosecutor, what do? Defense attorney? We'll reschedule the hearings and we'll open them. We'll put that IGG out in front of everybody, and we'll put the IGG on trial in those hearings, and we'll try to put all of those cats back in that bag, and maybe we can stop the flow of information and change everybody's talking points. That's what happened. But folks, if you like the way that I present things and break things down, please like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have a moment, go on there and post your comments, post your criticisms, post your thoughts. I enjoy hearing all of that. Hit the, what do they always say? Oh, so excuse me here. Hit the like button, and hit that bell. Get this stuff out there. Hit the like button. But folks, again, thank you for spending Friday night with me, and until next time, and hopefully next time is Sunday where I can really start to freak you out. Pavarotti is out.